Welcome back everyone, hope you're all having a fantastic day and welcome back to Run8 Train Simulator. Today we are here in Wasco, California on the BNSF Bakersfield subdivision, but we're going to be doing something a little different today. We're going to be doing some plant switching at the Savage Coal Transload Facility here in Wasco. We'll be moving some cars out of the plant that have been processed before returning with some cars that need to be processed, all while providing a brief introduction to plant switching on Run8. Without further ado, let's get the locomotive powered up, start switching some cars. Alright, here we are at the Savage Coal Transload Facility here in Wasco, California. The BNSF Bakersfield sub is off to our left here. That runs between Bakersfield, California and Fresno, California. So what is plant switching? Well, plant switching is pretty similar to regular switching in that you're going to be moving cars around a small yard. The only difference between plant switching and regular switching is that plant switching, you are restricted to the boundaries of the plant itself. You cannot bring cars out onto the main line. You cannot bring cars to another town or switch them to another yard. You can only work within the boundaries of the plant itself. The reason this is the case is because the plant switchers are usually operated by crews that are employed by the plant itself rather than by a railroad like BNSF or Union Pacific or something like that. So these crews are only trained and qualified on the plant tracks and not qualified on the main line or somewhere else. Another big difference between plant switching and regular switching is that plant switching, you're going to be using one or two locomotives that are privately owned by the plant itself. In our case, we have this GCFX SD40-2 for power. But otherwise, plant switching is pretty much the same as regular switching. We move cars in and around a small yard, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be moving these 4 empty coal hoppers out of the plant down to a yard just down there in the distance. And then when we drop those empty coal hoppers off, we're going to grab 4 loaded coal hoppers and we're going to bring them back to the plant for processing. But that's basically it for plant switching and the plan for today. This is going to be a pretty short video. It doesn't take a lot of time to switch cars in and out of a plant, but this is a great job if you are looking for a quick job on a multiplayer server. These plant jobs take at most maybe an hour, maybe slightly longer than that. They can be as short as 10 to 15 minutes, so it's great if you want to be on the multiplayer server, but you don't have time to run a freight train for 3 to 4 hours or run a local. So this is a great opportunity, and they're scattered all around the different regions. So it's a great opportunity if you have a short amount of time, and they're also quite fun. All right, so with that all being said, let's get this locomotive powered up, and we'll start switching some cars. We'll just simply turn the locomotive on here. Let that power up. All right, now the locomotive's powered up. We can go ahead and walk up to the locomotive. We'll go ahead and jump into the cab. And once we're in the cab here, we're gonna just get a couple switches set up. We'll get the engine run switch on, gen field on, control and fuel pump on, and then we'll leave the panel lights and gauge lights off. It's not too dark outside. It's a little cloudy today, but it's not dark enough that we need the panel light and gauge lights on. And then we'll come back here, and we'll leave the platform lights off as well since it is the daytime. We'll get the headlights set to short hood lead, and we'll get the isolation switch over to run. And that's basically it for the setup. Only other thing we need to do is get the headlight to dim. And that is pretty much all we need to do here. I'm going to turn on the overhead panel here. We'll go ahead and wait for the brake pressure to charge up in the locomotive before we start moving. We'll need the main reservoir and equalizing reservoir up to 90 before we can start moving, so we'll wait for that. All right, so it looks like we got good brakes, so we can go ahead and do a quick brake test. We'll go ahead and release the brakes. Brake pressure comes up to 90, fully released, looking good. We'll go ahead and do a brake set. And the brakes are setting. So we do have functional brakes. We can go ahead and release the parking brake. And now I'm going to go ahead and jump off the locomotive, and I'm going to walk all the way to the back of the train. that is probably the last time we're going to be in the locomotive itself. We're going to spend most of our time walking around switching cars, so we won't probably be back in the locomotive until the end of this switching job. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and jump onto the back of this train. We'll go ahead and protect the shove. Bring the cars all the way down to the yard there. We're going to probably have to throw some switches, so we'll need to stop for that. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and set the reverser to reverse. Go ahead and release the brakes. Train and locomotive. Throttle up 1 notch. We should start moving here in a second. And there we go. We're heading back to the yard. Alright, so we're coming up to the yard now. Looks like we're going to have to throw 1 switch right before the crossing up there. This guy right here. And when we throw that switch, we'll be able to head down this far left track to this track where we are storing all the empty cars that have been processed by the plant already. So we'll just need to throw that switch here shortly. And then once we throw that switch, we can continue on into the yard. Okay, here comes the switch. We'll go ahead and set some brakes. And there we go. Go ahead and jump off. And I'll go walk over and throw this 1 switch. There we go. Switch has been thrown. And these 2 switches are looking good. So we will now ride these empty coal hoppers back to where the rest of the empty coal hoppers are, and we'll hook them up. And let's go ahead and bring it back another 3 cars. 2 cars. 1 car. Half a car. And there we go. Go ahead and set some brakes. Set some train brakes and set some locomotive brakes. And we'll also go ahead and set the reverser to neutral. And I'm going to go ahead and jump off the train now. And all we have to do here now is we're going to go ahead and connect the air hose. And then we'll go ahead and walk up to the front of the train. And what we'll do when we get up here to the locomotive is we're going to go ahead and disconnect the air hose. I'm going to go ahead and close the angle cock on this locomotive. Leave this one to open. We'll go ahead and disconnect the air hose. That's going to dump the air out of the coal hoppers. And then the last thing I want to do is quickly run back down to where we hooked up these cars. We had 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is where I need to come back to. And I'm just going to go ahead and open both of these angle cocks. And the reason I'm doing that is because when the unit train departs, the air will still be able to flow through all of these coal cars. By the way, how did these coal cars get here if the plant switcher can only switch in the plant itself? Well, these coal cars were delivered by a unit-loaded coal train that came from the Barstow-Yermo area. I think it officially originated at the Savage Coal Mine in Utah. But this loaded coal train was brought up by a player. All the cars were dropped off. The plant switcher is now going to switch all of these loaded coal hoppers, bring them up to the plant, have them unloaded, and then bring them back as empties, and then the empty coal train will depart to head back towards the Savage Mine via Barstow and Yermo. Plants usually get their cars delivered by either a unit train or a local, and in our case, it was a unit coal train. So there we go. We've dropped off our empty processed cars from the plant, and now we're going to go grab some loaded cars and bring them back to the plant, so we'll go back to the front of the train. And when we get up here, we're also going to need to unhook the coupler, so we'll come up here and do that. Now, the coupler is yellow, so it looks like we're going to have to move the locomotive back just slightly, just so we can Make sure there's not tension on the knuckles. So we'll go ahead and release the brakes. We'll go ahead and just slightly move the locomotive back. There we go. Set some locomotive brakes. And we'll go ahead and open the knuckles. Put the locomotive to forward, release all the brakes. And there we go. Stop the locomotive there. And all the empties are now sitting here waiting for the unit empty coal train that will depart in the next couple of days. And we'll go ahead and bring it back. Another 2 cars for the hookup. 1 car. Half a car. And there we go. Go ahead and set some brakes again. And when you're hooking up to cars, you want to be at roughly 4 miles an hour or lower. That's speed you want to be at so you don't break a knuckle. Alright, so we're hooked up. We'll go ahead and make sure the brakes are set, which they are. We'll set the reverser to neutral. Go ahead and jump down, and we'll start hooking up these cars completely. Go ahead and get the air hoses connected. And then before I actually start bleeding air into the train, I'm going to walk 4 cars back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go down to that car there. And down here, I'm going to go ahead and get in between these cars. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the air hose, and I'm going to make sure that this angle cock is closed on the last car that we are picking up, so that way when we bleed air into the train, we'll only bleed air into these 4 cars. These 2 will just remain here, so we don't need to put any air inside them. And now that we're back up front, all we have to do now is start bleeding air into the cars. We'll go ahead and set the angle cocks to partial. It's going to start putting air into the hoppers. And since there's only 4 cars, it's not going to take long to bleed air in. We can actually set this to open now. And there we go. We've got air in the coal hoppers now. We'll go ahead and do a brake test. We'll go ahead and release the brakes. And that's a good release. We'll go ahead and do a set. And that is a good set. Brakes are working. And now we can actually jump back into the front of the switch job. And we can actually ride on the front back to the plant way down there. So let's go ahead and jump on our locomotive here at the front. Jump on the front, get some wipers on. Because in the span of us getting from the plant back to the yard, apparently it started raining. Go ahead and release the brakes. Reverse it forward. Throttle up. Release the locomotive brakes. And here we go. We're heading back to the plant. You know, I just thought of something. While I disconnected the air hose to those last 2 coal hoppers that weren't supposed to come with us to the plant, I think I forgot to unhook the couplers, and they've probably been dragging behind us for the last couple 100 feet. Yeah, I should probably stop the train and check that. Yep, there they are. Just tagging along for the ride. Alright, well, let's fix this quickly here. We'll go ahead and now open the coupler pins. Move the train forward here. There we go. Now we have the correct number of cars going back to the plant. And if anyone asks why there are 2 coal hoppers with random flat spots on the wheels, it totally wasn't us. We totally didn't drag 2 coal hoppers down the track with the brakes fully applied. Nope, not us. Doesn't sound like us. Doesn't sound familiar. Alright, here we go. Brakes released, throttle up. Now we can go to the plant. And with the correct number of cars this time. Alright, here comes the plant again. I'm gonna hop off early right before the plant just so we can spot these cars in properly and make sure they are all good to go. And then we will be done. But I'll go ahead and start setting some brakes now. So we can stop just before the plant. And we're looking good. Go ahead and make sure the train comes to a stop. And there we go. Go ahead and jump off the locomotive. And I'll walk forward here to spot the coal hoppers into the plant. We want the last one to be right about here. Go ahead and turn on the locomotive monitor up top. Go ahead and release the brakes. Throttle up. And we'll pull the hoppers forward into the plant. And 3 cars to a stop. Put on some brakes, 2 cars to a stop. 1 car to a stop. Half. And that is a perfect spot. Perfect, we'll make sure they are officially in the plant. I'll turn on the industry config tags. Those are those orange dots that you've seen in past episodes. And make sure that the cars are correctly spotted, and they will get processed by the sim. And they are indeed spotted where we need them to be. So we'll go ahead and turn those industry tags off. And we are done. We'll go walk back up to the locomotive. And all that's left to do is to turn this locomotive off, and we'll be done. We'll go ahead and head back up to the cab. Hop back on. We'll go ahead and set a little more brakes on the train since it's stationary. Make sure the locomotive brakes are also set. There we go. We can turn that locomotive monitor off now. We'll go ahead and turn the windshield wipers off. We'll go ahead and set the reverser to neutral. Turn the headlights off. Come back to the back panel here. We'll set the isolation switch to start, stop, isolate. Set the headlight controls to single middle. All of our lights were off already. And we'll take the control and fuel pump off, gen field off, engine run switch off. And looks like the locomotive is powered down. We'll set the parking brake as well, just to triple check to make sure this train doesn't roll away. And then we can go ahead and jump out of the locomotive. And all that's left to do is turn the locomotive off. And there we go. We have completed our plant switching job for the day. Like I said earlier, plant switching is a pretty short job to do, but if you're on a multiplayer network and you're looking for a quick job rather than taking a freight train for 3 to 4 hours or a local, this is a great opportunity, and as I said earlier, they're quite fun jobs to do. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content coming in the future. And I'll see you all in the next one.